Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. I'm Diana Joseph. I'm the CEO of the Corporate Accelerator Forum. And we are here for our session, How to Get Ready for Corporate Partnership. We're going to talk about what it means to be ready and really dive into a founder's journey as he's come to and toward corporate partnership and what comes next for him. The Corporate Accelerator Forum, my organization, is a group by and for corporate leaders who stretch outside their core business by partnering with startups. We've been doing that for the last 5 years. And over the course of that time, we've come to understand some things about what's going on behind the scenes for corporations as they try to partner. And we've learned that that information is going to be really, really valuable to startups. And for that reason, we started a startup accelerator called CLIck, the Startup Accelerator for Corporate Partnership. My colleagues are Margarita Kiwis from the Peace Innovation Institute and the Peace Innovation Lab at Stanford University, and Corentin Cremet from Orca. They are full partners in this endeavor, but today they are holding up the back end of this session. So please, if you're in the session live, they're the people to talk to if you have anything you want to say about the session. And for everyone else, they're going to bid us farewell now. They'll turn their video off so that we can focus in on our speaker. Bye, Corentin. Bye, Margarita. Okay. Great. So Corentin is running the slides. Corentin, you can move to the next one. So this is our Startup Accelerator for Corporate Partnership. You can find more information about it at corporateacceleratorforum.com/click. And we will be providing a discount code for folks who are here. That'll come up at the end. I want to say thank you to IDEA, to IPO. This is at the same time that it's part of our CLIck series, it's also part of the IDEA to IPO series. All right. I see a question about whether we'll share the recording later. We absolutely will, and we'll share the slides as well. So our guest today for CLIck is Nathan Horner. Nathan is the founder and CEO of Nictavi. And his is the first in a series of 3 sessions with startups, moving along the pathway toward more and more corporate partnership. Nathan, we'll be talking with Nathan today. He's right on the verge of corporate partnership and starting to get into in-kind partnerships. In September, we'll have a founder in the battery industry who has multiple paid partnership and working toward the next level. And in November, we'll have a founder who has partnerships with major companies. So you'll be able to see what happens all along the way. And depending where you are on your journey, take in the right lessons and the right reflections. In between those sessions, we'll have fireside chats with corporates and with experts who can shed light on different aspects of the journey. And you find all of that at corporateacceleratorforum.click. Sorry, one more time, corporateacceleratorforum.com/click. Next. Thank you, Corentin. So let's talk about Nathan a little bit. I asked Nathan to do this because I've looked at quite a lot of startup pitch decks, and Nathan's was significantly more ready than other startups at his stage. And I really wanted to expose, to help other startups understand what that means. What does a more ready business look like? So let me introduce Nathan, and we'll dive into his story. So Nathan is an artist. He has sold work to the likes of Wes Craven and other famous folks. He is a surfer, deeply steeped in LA culture. He is a print shop worker who understands materials and adhesives. And he has had some big experiences that have led him to start a company. When you see the white boxes on our slides, those are slides directly from Nathan's pitch deck. He's not here pitching today. He's here to tell his story and what's enabled him to really be ready. All right, Nathan, please please tell us your story. And actually, Corentin, you can leave it on. Thank you. Please tell us your story and take that into why you decided to start a company.
Hello, Diana. And for one, thanks for this opportunity to share my story and journey with Nictavi and my product, the Tarsus Eyelid Patch. Well, I was born in East Liverpool, Ohio in 1967, and I grew up in the Civil War area, Chancellorsville, Virginia. And I've always been an artist and creative my whole life since I was young. And I got an art scholarship in 1988 to San Diego, and that's when I began to surf. And then for the last 20 years, I've lived in Hollywood, California, where I founded Nictavi in 2019. My future's really bright, but that's not why I wear shades. I have an artificial cornea, and it's part of the medical journey that brought me to where I am today. Since the 90s, doctors have been treating a primary condition in my eye, which actually stems from chickenpox and kind of is related to shingles. And it damaged my cornea. And then I had multiple surgeries, embryonic tissue grafts, cornea transplants, all just the multiple surgeries over the years. But there was a second condition that went, unnoticed. And through my own research, I stumbled upon this diagnosis of nocturnal legophthalmos, which is the inability to close your eyes during sleep. So this condition, no matter what they did to my cornea, exposed my cornea to the air during the night, which, as you know, when you blink, it's a necessity that you blink every few seconds to keep your eyelid, your cornea moist and healthy. Well, at night, if your eye is open, it just dries it out and then erodes it and then leaves it exposed. That leads to possible infections and scarring and corneal blindness and a lot of pain and suffering. And actually 20% of the population have some degree of this condition. So it turns out that I unknowingly of that condition, I had all these surgeries and I ended up having to have an artificial cornea after being blind for a year due to an infection in my eye. And then my eye was sewn closed 3 times for a month. And I asked my doctor, who's the head of the cornea division at Jules Stein Institute, Dr. Eldavi, I asked him, what's the purpose of sewing my eye closed? And is there an alternative to it? And he said, it helps heal the surface. It helps encourage healing of the surface of the cornea and protects it. And I asked him, was there an alternative? He said, there's nothing that people would comply with that's comfortable enough specifically for eyelid closure. Most of the things are for dressing patches or for when you're sedated. So I can't prescribe you anything. So I said, wow. So I was in the road to getting my eyes sewn closed again. And there's a slide for that, I think, that shows that.
Yeah, let's look at that. Corentin's 2 slides on.
Yeah,
there is Nathan's eye.
So closed one of the times. And you could actually hear the needle pop through your eyelids. So it's pretty gnarly. And then then it's sewn closed for a month. So at that point I said, okay, he knew I was an artist. He had been to my art shows. He knew what, I was intellectual. And I said, look, can you give me some time to try to make something, an alternative? So I tried different products, tape and all these things, but they left a residue, painful to remove. And then you had to scrub off. And there was, everything was for when you're sedated. So it wasn't intended to be, comfortable enough for you.
Right.
So I got materials companies to send me various materials, and I began my journey of iterations and design in making my product. But at that early stage of my functional prototypes and early ideation, it was successful enough to where he allowed me to not have my eyelid closed. And he, from that point on, kind of spectated me along the path of creating the Tarsus Eyelid Patch.
Wow. That's amazing. I want to, Corentin, you can go to the next slide. Let's look at what some of those alternatives are. So I also need help closing my eye at night, and I've used the one in that lower left corner, with the tape over the eye. I can tell you that it is not comfortable or ideal. I've also tried the one in the, that's in the lower right. In the lower left, I've tried that eye patch, which actually has no relationship whatsoever to my eyelid, and it's just fully open underneath the eye patch and does not solve the problem at all. So I've just been living with it. It's really something, Nathan. I mean, your experience was so harsh with that needle coming through, not to mention just the kind of person you are. You weren't going to let that go. It's just intolerable. You can go on, Corentin, to the next slide. So in addition to it being intolerable to you, there's real value to other people. Can you talk a little bit about this comparison that you've just set up recently?
Okay, yeah. When it comes to me, I have a lot of tenacity and grit, and I have a savvy with imagery, and I love words. I've written poetry. So all this capability stack of me being an artist and my history with all that and attention to detail all manifested into like this perfect person that when I had this problem, it just put all the ingredients together for me to just go after this, to try to get this on the market, create this company and the motion graphics and everything else. And this is a recent little comparison I made against medical tape, which medical tape, when people use it, it's like duct tape. It's used it for everything. So, you know, the adhesive is too aggressive for the eyelid. So when you remove it, it leaves a residue on there, and it's too aggressive, so it hurts to peel it off. And after a few times, it hurts to put anything back on there. And the material has no consideration for the properties of the material because it's made for a whole range of things. And then it's not shaped at all for any specific reason for the eyelid, and you can use it in so many different ways. It's kind of a that'll do, like you're telling your patients or someone that'll do. You know, you can find somehow to figure this out on YouTube, and I think that's kind of an insult. So, so anyways, and it's kind of use at your own risk, and basically a single-use thing, and it may remove your lashes, you know, when you apply it because it's so aggressive. So my product is value-driven and specifically designed with the, you know, corners and the rounded, the angling up corners to be harmonious with the orbital socket of the eye and avoidance of the eye opening because it's placed above the eye opening. And your eyelid is like an accordion, so the skin wrinkles and retracts with the levator muscle, which pulls it back into the skull, into the cavity there. But if there's something adhered to it that's rigid enough, it will not allow that retraction, and it'll hold the eyelid in place in the closed position. And also it'll still, my method, patented method and design, actually allows for the lower eyelid. You can just take one finger and lower it down, put in liquid tears or medicine and let go, and it goes back into the closed position. So all of these concerns, design elements and the adhesive elements, mine's a multi-layered product that's all wear trialed with the manufacturer, the materials, and hypoallergenic. My product is FDA registered and listed. I just got a CMS code for reimbursement, for Medicare reimbursement. And it's also a patented device and method.
Yeah.
Compared to the tape, that is.
Great. We're gonna talk about a lot of those specific things. There's so many insights here that you've come across. The first one is just, who knew that closing your eye is the hard thing? It seems like opening your eye should be the part that takes effort, but actually closing it takes effort. And that's a core insight that started you on this journey. So Corentin, we can go on. So for Nathan, there's no choice not to start something here. He had to make that first example for himself, because having his eyes sewn shut again was purely unacceptable. Cannot have that. And the alternatives do not work. So in some ways, he was really driven to do that by his own need. And along the way, in discovering that 20% of us have the same challenge, that starts to look like a business. So the possibility of money doesn't hurt either. For when you have the slides later, there's a link here to a video of Steve Blank about passion as a driver for companies. Go on, please, Corentin. So Nathan, what was the most important thing for you to take care of early in the journey toward corporate partnership?
Well, for one, securing your IP. You know, you have to secure your intellectual property. So for me, you know, I have like I said, I have a lot of grit and I have a lot of attention to detail. And my art is really a meditation of decision making, because you have a blank canvas. You have to manifest the vision of what it is, whether people believe you can do it or not. I used to be a photorealist when I was young, and then I began to broaden that with looser brushstrokes and everything else. And I made my scale bigger to challenge myself. So I'm always challenging myself. So all these things made me have like the training and everything else to create and manifest these original ideas. So having that, knowing from the beginning that if I have some simple idea like this, someone could just steal it from me, and I'm nobody. So I went about from the beginning for my prototypes, securing my patents.
Okay, great. Let's go to the next slide. So I took a look at your patent. Patents are public documents. And this is a picture, the picture that you're looking at here on the lower left is a picture directly out of your patent, and it has a prototype in it. Let's give that a minute. I'm not a lawyer or any kind of IP expert, and neither are you, but I want to point out that we have another session coming up on August 23rd with David Smith, who is a lawyer and an expert, and we can get farther into IP strategy at that time. But what really landed with me after looking at some other patents from startups is that yours has an actual functioning prototype in it, a photo of a real thing. I've been looking at some patents recently that have a drawing of an idea, and that's very different. You can go to the next slide, please, Corentin. So if you have a patent, but you haven't actually made anything physical, or if it's software, if you haven't made the software yet, you're too early for corporate partnership. There may be other partners, early stage investors, friends and family angels that are willing to start talking to you when you have a patent, but nothing created in the world. But for corporate partners, you really have to have made something. Okay, let's go on. Would you talk just a little bit about how you structured the patent?
Well, originally, I went out trying to find a patent attorney, and because I knew I needed to do that, because even though I'm confident to do a lot of things, I know there's some things that are out of my scope that I will, get someone professional to do. So I knew the patents were too complex for me. So I went about finding an attorney, and the one thing was money. So I knew I could sell my art and sell prints and of course take my tax returns and whatever else it took and pay over time to get this done. Because at one lump sum, it's really expensive for attorneys and patent attorneys specifically. So I found an attorney I could work with, and then he didn't work out the first time. So then the second time I wanted to call the biggest and one of the best attorneys I could, Knovis Martin, and I called them and Century City, and I said, how much is it for your service? And it was ridiculous expensive. And then they guided me to someone who had just left their firm, and he was really, really good, Craig Koch, and his expertise helped me with the structure of my patent. They don't write it for you though. So you can't expect them to do that for you. But I needed to secure not only my design and the nuances of the behaviors of my product, but also the method in which it's used. So that was important.
Got it. All right, thank you. Let's go on to the next, please. So you secured your patents. It's worth investing in a good lawyer and hustling if you have to find one. You secured your trademarks, you secured your copyright. So those are all forms of IP validation that have been really important along your journey. And let's go on to what are other types of hoops that you've found you need to jump through?
Well, I found, for one,
you can go on to the next slide.
Being in the golden age of startups, basically, we have the internet. We can research articles and data, and we have so much we can do, and we can apply for different things, that we would have to have some professional do. So I could save a lot of money by doing it myself. And a lot of the hoops I found I had to go through, I didn't know about. So I consulted, or I joined incubators like the Consortium for Technology and Innovation in Pediatrics, the West Coast CTIP, and Scale LA or Scale Health now. And, the Small Business Development Center also has offered me a lot. And I went to attend a class at the Pasadena City College on venture launch, and it was under Steve Blank methodologies of lean launch. So I learned along my path things I needed to do and loops I needed to jump through.
Got it. Got it. So you got your 510K exemption. Can you say like one sentence about what that is in case folks who are not in your field?
Okay, so being that some things need to go into your body, so they have to be a lot more regulated. So, you know, it's my product is like basically, you know, along the lines of Band-Aids or outer things that are on your skin. So mine's a class 1 device, which is exempt from all those kind of unnecessary, you know, processes and scrutiny by the FDA.
Got it. And so you also got your registered entity numbers with various regulatory agencies, the state, whoever. You also elected to get your product insured. Okay, let's go to the next. Very recently, I think there's one right before that, please, Corentin, the previous slide. Okay. Later there we go. That's what I was looking for. Thank you, Corentin. So here are some things that you've been posting about on LinkedIn, some recent regulatory lines that you've been able to cross. Can you give maybe one sentence about each of these?
Yes. For one, bringing awareness about my product is really important right now to get this product on the market and adapted with, you know, clinicians, hospital groups, and end users. And to do that, I will need, for one, it needs to be affordable, which comes into reimbursement and reimbursement codes. So I submitted my product to the CMS, which is an agency that gives you codes for Medicare reimbursement for clinicians and people that, you know, that have Medicare or deal with people with Medicare. Then I have a lot of interest overseas in Australia and Spain and now Israel. And you can file for a certificate to export to those countries and get FDA approval to do that. And that helps you in the vetting on when you go to apply for the regulatory process in the other country, because you've already been approved by the FDA here to export to them. So basically vetted here. And then also, I figured the foundation of validation is clinical trials. So I'm in clinical use at UCLA's Jules Stein Institute in the clinic of Dr. Anthony Nictavi, is the head of the cornea division there. And one Dr. Olivia Chang did a poster presentation in November of last year concerning the tarsus eyelid patch and addressing keratopathy, exposure keratopathy, which is drying of the cornea and causing damage. So now they're doing another one. 2 other doctors are doing, Angeline Wen and Sarah Gu are doing a clinical trial at the Children's Hospital now, which has been accepted to 2 conferences, the Women in Ophthalmology and a conference in Chicago, where they'll do a presentation about its use with children and adolescents. And so all this validation and all this regulatory stuff is foundation level for corporate interest and for user validation and clinician validation of my product.
Awesome. So let's go back. You can go to the next slide, Corentin. So what had you realized that corporate partnerships were going to be important? And talk a little bit about how you first reached out.
Okay, so in the beginning, I realized that I had my idea, and I realized, okay, there's a couple of different ways this could work out. I could, you know, I could license it with my idea, and they could develop on my functional prototypes. I could, you know, that was one way I could do it. So I initially explored that route, and I had the patents, and I reached out to a few companies in the niche.
And this is just to check. This is even before you started your own company. This is your first move was maybe I can do this through a corporate. Yeah.
Exactly.
Got it.
That was the first thing. I mean, you know, I wasn't even intending to be the founder or CEO of a company myself. So I explored this company, expressed some interest in the Northwest, and they specifically had a niche, a similar niche market. So that, you know, we had a little evaluation there for a while, and it went really pretty well. But then at the end, it turned out to not work out at that point.
Okay, let's pause there because we're going to get into more details about all these companies in a few minutes. Go on to the next slide, please. Where you see click note, those are comments from us at Click, not necessarily Nathan's words, but things that we wanted to emphasize. So if you're in B2B, or if you're in B2B2C, or if you're in a complex industry, chances are you're going to need at least one serious partner in order to grow. In fact, even if all you want to do is to get on the shelf in a big box store, let's say, that's probably a corporate partnership through the distribution partner. So it's great that Nathan had this awareness that that's where growth comes from in the first place. Okay, let's go on. So how did you know that you were ready to talk to these folks?
Well, once you get patents, you're ready. If you secure patents, then you have a lucrative market and potential and need. If you suffered through what I did and you realize the impact you could have on people's quality of life and preserving their vision, and me being an artist or anybody, how valuable your vision is and your sight is, even losing one eye, it's pretty motivating for you morally, if you have any kind of moral compass, to put everything you can to get this onto the market. And if people aren't aware of the significant of the value of this product, then you need to go about bringing validation and awareness to the public, and make it happen one way or the other.
Got it. All right, let's go on. I want to highlight a couple things about that. So I think we skipped one, Corentin. Can you go back? There we go. So you felt ready because you were bringing enough to the table. You had this insight that this was an important problem, that you were solving it in an important way. And so that's what had you get started. You and I have talked before, and I wanted to highlight this. If you're prepared to get rejected and to learn from that, then you don't have to worry too much about being perfectly ready, right? What you're ready for is to have that experience and learn from it. Right. And we talked before about having a really solid regulatory and market foundation. Okay, go on. And folks, we will have Q&A at the end. So go ahead and put your questions in, and we will make sure to address them later. All right. I also, from Click's point of view, we want to emphasize a couple of things. Having a clear IP strategy is really important. So not just that you have a patent, but also that you know what you want to share and what you don't want to share, and stand really confidently in that in those conversations when you've got someone else across the table with a different agenda. We also want to see, it's also important to be at NASA readiness level 6 at least, and we'll talk more about what that looks like. Let's go on. So how's it going? How's your corporate engagement work going?
Well, it's going really good. I mean, I had a $36,000 grant awarded to me from CTIP, and that was funded through the FDA, and that enabled me to get my first run of actual product. So at that point, I could give out samples. I could, doctors could use it, and all this validation has come. So, it's going good, and the interest is generating more interest. And I've had a few, interesting evaluations, one in the manufacturing realm, and then I have a few kind of in the distributing realm now. And I have a couple foreign actual corporate distributing partnerships that I'm in, that are kind of evaluate. Well, one's on its way; it's not even evaluation anymore, and the other one is beginning the evaluation process as we speak.
Awesome. So let's go on to the next. So we've got an eye care company, manufacturer materials company. We'll call them partner 1, partner 2, partner 3 from here on out. Okay, go ahead.
Yeah. Oh, go ahead.
Oh, go ahead. Go back. You have more to say. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I don't. I thought you were speaking to me, so it's okay.
Okay. So partner 1 is the one that you reached out to way back in 2018 when you weren't a company yet. You just had a patent and your prototype, and they said no, thank you at that time. But in 2022, you're having this conversation again. Do you want to say a sentence or two about how that reopened?
Yeah, actually, once I realized that I had to go this other path from the initial corporate like partnership route or licensing route. And because of the internet, I could look up all the potential use cases and markets, and I realized how lucrative this was. And I'm savvy with, you know, thinking of a name and all the marketing stuff and the art and visualization and everything. So then I, you know, wanted a really cool sounding name that meant something. So I thought of different names that meant different things around the cornea and the eye, and then I ended up getting a thesaurus, which is an awesome way to find a name for something. And I looked at different names around that sounded cool and that visually had elements that I could do stuff with design wise. And so when I came across Nictavi, a version of Nicto, which means blink in Latin, the C, I realized in my mind, it just turned and blinked. And then that's what I made my motion graphic, and I secured that and made it my fictitious business name, got trademarks on it, and protected the trademark in India and China initially, because you have to think ahead, even though I'm not there yet. You know, I want to trademark that and look ahead at protecting my IP. That's number one thing. And
so I want to, can you tie that back to company number 2 said no?
Yeah.
And then recently, did they see something about your trademark, or like what has it be a warmer conversation now?
That's what I'm getting. Okay. So I developed, I came from that initial thing. In between then, I developed all that fictitious business name, the company, all the marketing stuff, got on LinkedIn, which was boom. Then I could market people, I could reach out to people, I could send an entry thing. And I'm just, you know, there's no stopping me, because there's analogies in my life that I compare to surfing, to my art. And that's all the same as doing my business. So when you surf, you surf a million times, you don't get waves, but you got to keep surfing to get the dream of the wave of your life. So rejection's nothing. It's just a part of doing it. If you're going to do it and get to this point, you have to go through that. So, okay, that's what happened. Big deal. Keep doing my business, making it perfect, get the validation, you know, learning the whole time, going to incubators and getting consultants and everything else and getting help from them. And then, you know, at another point, you're marketing on LinkedIn and you've come a long way. Then it's a couple years down the road, you have your product, actual product, you have clinical adoption, you have it's a whole nother ball game then.
Gotcha.
They don't have to do anything. You already have everything done basically.
Yep. Got it. Okay. So we're going to move pretty rapidly now, because I do want to make sure that we get to Q&A before the end of the hour. You've been talking with this manufacturing materials company, and they have actually given you some data. They've looked at your market data. They've gone and done the research themselves, essentially duplicated it to convince themselves that you were right, and they were convinced, and they've shared their findings with you to layer on your validation. They've offered you free consulting as well, or they've offered you consulting from in-house at a corporate, which is something that could be incredibly valuable. And you've started talking with a distributor recently. So say a few words about that, because they want you. So how's that part going?
Okay, well, the partnership thing was really good. With this market, it's hard to show like consolidated use cases of it, because there's really not anyone trying to really market. It's not a household. You don't have like tissue. You say you got names for household names for certain products. No one could think, what would you think of for eyelid closure? Tape. I mean, that's it. But I want to be that household name for eyelid closure. Then it'd be more consolidated market for a for a company like a manufacturing company or anyone else, and it would look more enticing to them. And for distributors, everything's already done, so it's enticing to them. I've got the interest all over the world. I've got the validations already done, and all the regulatory stuff is done. All they got to do is distribute it, you know, and they could make money.
Okay. Great. So all they have to do is distribute it, but they're asking you to come in at a commodity price. And so at the moment, you're saying no to them, and until it comes in a way that actually serves your business. It is actually, just want to emphasize that it's okay to say no when the deal is bad. Okay, go on.
Well, the reason why that deal, go ahead.
I'm sorry, I'm moving us forward because we have so many juicy stories, and we may come back to that as well. So I will mark when I'm talking to Nathan about Go On, and when I'm talking to Corentin, who's running our slides, about Go On. Okay, so let's talk about that market size idea. So you just talked about for a moment the manufacturing partner who sees that you have the right market size. And they've said no because it's they've said no for the moment. They've said in kind only is what they've said, in kind only for the moment. There may be another partnership down the line, but at the moment they see it's too fragmented. But let's talk about what that market size was that they found persuasive. If we go to the next slide, this is a very traditional slide. Every startup has this in their deck. It's a little bit too fast. One more before that, please, Corentin. So what is your total area market? What does that cover? Sorry, total available market. What does that cover?
So that would be everybody, the whole world. If everybody that had some sort of need for an eyelid closure product, hospitals and the ICU units, ophthalmology, people in ophthalmology addressing various corneal issues, optometrists, plastic surgeons, end users, people with Bell's palsy, people with stroke. So all these different addressable, conditions. That's all that in the whole world. That would be my TAM. If you
right.
can, and you can't really calculate how many times people rip tape instead of buying my product. But if you could, that's why I
got it.
That to be my TAM.
And this is one of the things that really jumped out to me at the beginning, that many of the decks that I see have list as their TAM the entire industry that they're part of. So if it's an educational technology solution, they list all of educational technology as their TAM, which is not correct. You're not aiming to solve the entire problem of educational technology. You're aiming to solve a very specific problem within it. And so you really did this right. Your TAM is everybody who needs to solve this very specific problem of eyelid closure, and it still comes out plenty big enough. Let's go to the next slide. So the TAM is all of and only the people whose problem you actually solve, not all of healthcare, not all of eye care, just eyelid closure. That's what your potential partners, whether they're investors or whether they're corporates, that's what they want to see. Your SAM is the segment that you can actually see going after. And Nathan, in the Q&A, you can talk about what tools you've used if you like. And the SOM is your market share. So you're claiming that you can get 3/4 of the market of the segment of the segment of reachable folks. And given the competition that we saw before and all those like horrible, painful looking tools, you really might be able to get 3/4. It might be a little on the aggressive side, but you've got a case for it. Okay, next. So we're going to go very quickly through this. I'm just going to show the timeline of your journey. We've talked about some things in it. Go ahead to the next Corentin, please. So that's a little bit too fast. Go back one, please. There we go. All right. No, there we go. All right. So this is starting in 2018. You checked off that important validation of getting the patent. You started that first conversation with partner one. You're working on the name. Go ahead, please, Corentin. One slide. Great. And so you joined the venture course. You were sent there by CTIP, so you're getting a lot of help. You're taking on that help because it's helping you move forward. You're pitching. Go ahead, please, Corentin. You're going to a manufacturing convention. You're other people. You're being showcased within CTIP. You're applying for more stuff. Go on, please, Corentin. You actually got the grant so that you could make the product in 2020. And go on, please. This is what it looks like as your product is rolling off the lines. You're actually manufacturing yourself. Okay, go ahead.
Well,
this is the. Okay, sure.
I actually don't manufacture myself. I have high-tech products, which is 40 years in the die-cutting medical device. I subcontract them to do my manufacturing.
Right.
ISO certified and everything else, just to clarify that.
Yeah, thank you. And you can go back and show that for a second, Corentin, one slide up. Yeah, so pardon, I didn't mean to imply that you're doing it in your garage. You actually have hired, but you are the leader of it. It's not something that you're having some other partner do. This is someone who's working under your leadership. Okay, next. So this is the poster that Nathan mentioned earlier, this is a case study of a young woman in a coma who cannot close her eyes. And this is about the patch doing the trick for her. You started that second partner conversation in 2021 as well. And go on, please, Corentin. This is that same regulatory slide before, just adding that you started partner 3 conversation, that conversation with the distribution partner this year. So continuing to move forward, continuing to move forward, continuing to move forward. All right. And from Click, what we want to say is that the more validation you have, the regulatory with the patents and patents, copyrights, all of that, with the technical validation of the prototype itself and the manufacturing, the market validation showing that you have a market that even your corporate partners can see for themselves is real, the research validation with the poster and the clinical trial that you have underway, the more of that you have, the more attractive you are to potential partners. And that's another reason why I could see that you were ready in a different way than many of the startups I see. Move on, please, Corentin. Thank you. So some lessons, you got to be patient. That timeline started in 2018 with the patent, but you got to remember he was working on the patent before that, so it's even longer. Get help. And to reemphasize something he told us before, it is okay to try before you're ready per se, as long as you're willing to learn. Okay, you hear a lot of yeses and nos and maybes. Go ahead, Corentin, to the next slide. Say a couple words about, Corentin, are you able to move to the that's okay, you can leave that there. So you've told me, and I'm moving very, very quickly, so we may get to more of this in the Q&A. You've told me that you've heard no, people say it's not a good fit. That first company, for example, said it's not a good fit, and that's really a gift. You didn't waste any time on them, not until they came back to you later. Maybe sounds like you're in the evaluation process. I just want to let people know that that might be something to watch out for. It could be a time sink. And yes, starts with paperwork. You've pointed out, like we'll know it's yes when there's a contract. And we wanted to highlight from Click that even if you start a contract process, that can take a very long time by itself. So you want to see that full, complete value exchange. All right, let's go quickly. I'm going to let folks read the slides about your partnerships and your partnership selection strategy. Those slides will be coming out to you, and we're going to jump all the way to our speed round. We can flash by those, his types of partnership, that he's leaning on the distribution. We have some tips for you from Click, and now let's do a speed round. So at Click, we have a readiness checklist that we like to use. We're going to go very quickly through these 6 elements of our checklist. So how are you feeling about your IP strategy?
Secure.
Super secure, right? Your NASA readiness level. So we can click into that, Corentin. So if you're not familiar, this is the NASA technology readiness level. Where would you say you land on this?
9.
9. Okay, you would say 9. The actual system flight proven through successful mission operations. For me, I'm not sure about 9 because we're still waiting on the clinical trials. So you are out in the world for sure. So you're definitely at least at 7. And then it'll be interesting to see how people respond as you have more and more clinical trials as you're getting to 9. Okay, next. So your reach out readiness, you've told me before that your reach out is through these relationships that you've developed on LinkedIn, like 8,000 something people that you can reach out to. You've learned what to expect from corporates and what corporates expect of you the hard way by actually working with them. How about on SDGs? So as corporates are getting more and more pressure to do the right thing by planet and people, SDGs startups become a way for them to improve on the UN Sustainable Development Goals. So let's go on to the next slide, please, Corentin. And so you're addressing at least one of these. What do you see?
Well, yeah, I intend for one, my product, though it's recommended single use, it really can be a multi-use product if with the proper care. So if you apply it on a clean eyelid and you remove it properly and place it back on the wax paper release liner that it comes in the cold seal, you can use it multiple times, but also I intend to in the future make it biodegradable, the whole thing biodegradable. The packaging already is, but the product itself biodegradable and compostable. That's
Yep.
ideally the goal.
Excellent. So you're straight on SDG number 3 around good health and well-being. You are an SDG number 3 company, and totally agree. So just calling folks' attention to number 12, 13, even 14 or 15, maybe, if it's going to reduce waste in the long run because it's compostable. So so you're definitely a potential SDG partner for corporates. All right, next. Okay, great. Keep going. So just some highlights from us. How can Click people help you, Nathan?
Well, for now, just bringing product awareness. Anybody that knows distributors or anybody that might be interested, or anybody that has a stroke or Bell's palsy or may need something for eye closure or leg ophthalmos, they can direct them to Nictavi.com and follow us on LinkedIn we're on Twitter too. I post a lot of articles and research too that validates, the use of the use of eyelid closure, because my product is another means of attaining eyelid closure, and they've been using eyelid closure through tarsorrhaphies and other means for a long time. Mine's just an improved method option to do that.
Okay, great. We will make sure that people know how to find you on LinkedIn through the slides when we send them out. Okay, you can go 2 slides forward, Corentin. So here are some messages that I've synthesized from the conversations that we've had, including this one. So networking is really important. Anybody you meet might be part of your story somehow. Getting help, for example, from CTIP. You've suggested using a tool for your financial projections. That was an important piece of getting the right TAM, SAM, and SOM. Code switch, as you're talking to different people, you may need to present what you're doing in a different way. It remains the same thing, but how you talk about it can change. Be honest, transparent, flexible, and rational. And I think one of the messages that's most important to you is that we're really in the golden age of invention, given the way that we can reach the information that we need. So the internet is your co-founder. All right. We are winding up. We're going to move into Q&A for just a moment. In just a moment, please go to the next slide, Corentin. We want to invite you to join Click. It's the Startup Accelerator for Corporate Partnership. We have the next 2 sessions that we have coming up. We have sessions twice a month. The next 2 sessions that we have, the first is with Amanda Cashin, who's the global head of Illumina for Startups. She's going to tell us what's going on behind the scenes in an accelerator. That should be really enlightening. We also have David Smith. I mentioned him earlier. He is a leading authority on biotech IP. So if you're not in biotech, that's okay. You're still going to learn a lot about how IP works. And he'll be shedding light on all the different options you have for protecting your work and how to use them. And next, please. Next slide, please. Nope, that's 2 or 3 or 4. One more up. I want to give them the information. There we go. Okay. So please join Click. You're invited to join Click. It's corporateacceleratorforum.com/click. It's the 2nd and 4th Tuesdays. The cost to startups, we want you to be our customers. We want to take care of you. So that the general cost is $190 a month. And for folks who are here, we have a discount on the first month. It's very significant. It's 40%. We do need to activate it. To get that discount, you do need to activate it by September 1st. After that, the percentage may change. The discount code is IPO in honor of our partner idea to IPO. And now we are ready for Q&A. So you can actually maybe close the slides so that we can make the screen bigger. And we're ready for questions. So Margarita and Corentin, please unmute, turn your video on, and tell us what questions we should answer.
That would depend on what the device is, and who's doing the clinical study or clinical trial. That could vary very much to see, determine. Like for me, for eyelid closure, it would depend on what condition you're addressing. How long does it take to generate, for your cornea to regenerate an epithelial defect? So then you would see whether, how people use it and how people use something else. and see which one healed better, or and how long, the duration of which that worked. Or and for me, it would just be eyelid closure, sewing your eyelid closed worked. So how did my product work at sustaining eyelid closure to generate effective retaining of moisture and protection and healing of the cornea for me? But I'm saying that's a broad question you're asking there. It depends on the product you're trying to find data on.
So Thomas asked, does it also, with regard to the clinical trial, does it, how do you get, a grant to prototype? How did you fund your prototype?
Such a good question.
Yeah. Well, for one, you have to look for opportunities for grants. You have to get involved in incubators that offer funding. You have to be assertive and get out there and look for things. Like I also am applied for a couple grants right now, and you may not get them, but you got to try. And especially if you're, limited funding, if you're an independent person and you don't have, big money behind you, there are different ways you could do it, like a loan or whatever, but you want to try to avoid that. And there's plenty of money out there. If you go about it right, you can get some of it, or you definitely should try.
I want to point out one other thing, which is that his initial prototype was not funded. He was just so desperate to take care of his own eye that he used his knowledge about materials and the internet to get materials sent to him so that he could make his own prototype. So that's just pure scrappiness.
Yeah. So sometimes it's just pure doing it. And then Nathan, in terms of where you did apply for grants, because it's sort of like, it gets like, what were the Google search terms you were using to discover where you would find grants to apply for? Because I think that's almost like, that's the key thing. Is like, tell us the search string, so that way when we go searching, we can also find those results.
Yeah, well, he would know the fields of his product to search in. But there are plenty of government grants. There are all kinds of opportunities out there. We have the internet now. There are no excuses. And look, if I can do it, coming from where I did, and not being an optometrist, not being an ophthalmologist, and coming into this field as from the user perspective, creating this product, doing all the iterations and getting as far as I can right now without corporate funding, making a lot of sacrifices and putting my own money, anybody can do this. And there's no excuses. And I don't have a big place I'm coming from. I have a small place. I'm, in a humble beginning, actually. But, anybody can do this. And we have the internet now. You just got to be tenacious and get out there and go for it.
So Nathan, when you were looking for government grants, where did you go? Did you go to grants.gov or?
Yeah, you can do that. And then also, you need to find if there are any incubators. What are the other resources you can use that give funding? For me, I found these incubators that offer funding, and then none of this is going to happen overnight, and you got to jump through the loops, and then eventually you may be in a position to possibly get one. That's what it is. And for me, I want to kind of skip back on something too that makes my product also very enticing to corporates. Is I have a good price point, and the cost of my product is low, and it's not a lot of computer components and all that. And the price point, being it's value driven, is a little higher than all the other garbage you can buy that's even close from China and Amazon or whatever. And that's what I'm trying to prove, is awareness and value. I want a value product on the market. So there, I wanted to say
Excellent. That. Excellent.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay.
All right. So I think we will shift to Mindshare, and we will make sure that Nathan has a room where he can answer questions somewhere along the way in the Mindshare time. If you came just for this presentation, it's been great to have you. Thank you for being here. You're welcome to exit at your moment. If you came just for the presentation, but you'd like to stay, you're welcome to. We're going to continue in the room, and we'll also set up some, not exactly one-on-one time, but some focus time with Nathan as our mentor, or with any of us who are the program leaders. Thank you so much for being here. I'm just going to make the slide bigger in the recording one more time. This is corporateacceleratorforum.com/click is where you need to go, or if you'd like to register for the program. Thanks very much, Nathan. Thank you so much for sharing your experience, your wisdom, and what you've learned.
Thank you so much for this opportunity. I appreciate it so much, really.
Excellent. All right. And I'm turning off the recording.